Welcome back to the Snap Judgements League, everyone. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and I am your shoutcaster for today's Week 4 battles here, showcasing, as said before, the Snap Judgements League. Now, let's take a look at what's been going on recently in the world of competitive Marvel Snap with a couple of content creators and a couple of players showcasing top-end gameplay and decks here live on stream for you. If you want to see these battles shoutcasted live and be a part of the, wherever it is, that side video experience, please join us at twitch.tv/ItsGuestGaming. But if this is your first time here for some bizarre reason, welcome. Please go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button down below as we take a look at DoctySnap versus Roshko to get us started for today. Good luck, have fun. Let's see what happens as Docty comes on in with a Ravonna, Hood, Sentry, so we got a little bit of a junk package to work with, and Ravonna, who typically hates seeing Wakandan embassy pop on down, did not get too much of a negative effect from that one as the Hood goes down first, still at a -1, so still able to be a nihilist over, and Roshko's coming down with a Quinjet on turn 1. Looks like we're playing into the Loki line and looking to see how can we defend against it, as Roshko has been pocketing a Baron Zemo as his highest cost card, but it's at 3/7, so a mill Loki deck potentially to get us going. It's nice seeing Sentry also back at his old statistics of 410 thanks to the Wakandan embassy, as we get a pull out of Cable with a little bit of unknown. Ravonna at 2/5 drops on in, and that 4 -8 goblins gotta feel good, especially when the right side's being clogged up via Monster Island a tad. We get a snap from Roshko, and Docty doesn't want to reveal any more information on this turn, decides to back away. Even though he's sitting on a cannonball, he's not sitting on anything else that really is gonna make it run. So, okay, that's fine. See how it is, take a cube, run away. That's one as we go to a Tarnax 4 into the first location and decides to flip over the Hood. Quinjet luck again in the opening hand, as the Hood's gonna get converted into a Deadpool for no apparent reason. And there's the Prof X line. So while sitting on Ravonna, Roshko's gotta try to keep up, knowing that there's most likely in this line of deck Professor X, which is possibly what he was pulling out of the Cable line earlier, as Sentinels reappear into Roshko's hand and the Widow's Kiss plops down into Tarnax 4. Vesuvius creates an interesting scenario here as we get a snap once again, but this time it looks like, it was from Roshko. 2 snaps back to back, and Docty's trying to figure out if his rocks are going to be enough to hold back the Loki deck. The Vesuvius makes this very treacherous and a very smart snap simultaneously, as Mobius M. Mobius drops down to undo the effect of Ravonna. So now for 2 cubes, Docty's got to put some work together to decide if he has enough to lock in potentially over in Vesuvius, but yet simultaneously he has to compete in Hala to try and stay over the top in that location. Tough position for Docty here, trying to decide how and where to take initiative, as Yondu's going to destroy Nebula out of Docty's deck and convert into a Selene, which hits the Hobgoblin. Of all things, it's really not the worst case scenario, but it might feel that way for Roshko right now as he loses his entire middle lane, including that Quinjet, which could have been vital potentially here on turn 5. Daredevil Insight coming in handy right now, especially prior to Mount Vesuvius. It's a full float, and while sitting on a cannonball in hand and keeping the priority in the hands of Roshko, it looks like we're in a safe situation if we're Docty to go all the way through with that Professor X. Docty looking at all possible scenarios, trying to see if there's any way that it could backfire on him. Contemplating every possible scenario and debating if it's even worth it to lock down the mid. Maybe it's better to lock down the right, go for the tiebreaker. Roshko knows better, takes the float, says, look, you're going to see more than I am. Plus, you've got Vesuvius on your side. If you snap, this is the scenario for me. So that's exactly what happens, and we see them retreat. Once again, retreat number 2, going into round number 3. One of Nebula's favorite locations, the miniaturized lab, especially on curve here in turn 1. That's got to feel good, but the Snow Guard's going to try to contest it. So we could see some Hawks get dropped early, especially now with another restrictive location in Avengers Compound coming into the party. Small little cable, take a draw. And the Hood's going to put a demon in the hand. Roshko's got a unique set here, trying to constantly stay ahead. And honestly, I think Cable's probably the most important card in Roshko's deck right now, constantly trying to find the elimination factor, whether it be an Annihilus, a Professor X, a Cannonball, any of those top 4, maybe 5 cards that you would see in Docty's style of deck might end up being the winning scenario to keep things in line for them. They both Jeff into the miniaturized lab, looking to play each other out there, but neither can be the sneaky, treacherous player they were looking to find. Tough call with between the debris and the Ravona, because even though the reductions are applied, not too much they can work with there. Yeah, Docty's hesitant, and as soon as we get a snap from Roshko, Docty backs away. It's a full-on tie, 8-8, cube by cube by cube, trickling away as we go into round number 4. One of the most frustrating locations in Marvel Snap, Dream Dimension's gonna open us up first. Demon drops down for Docty, a Hood drops down, puts the demon in the hand. And now, with an Annihilus finally in hand, and the Ravona, who can still capitalize that Dream Dimension, keep the 5-cost Chaos on curve, Docty's got to feel pretty good here with 2 good options to work with. Ooh, in a Mojo world. I'm really liking this choice right here by Docty, looking to clog up the Eternity range by sending over a Green Goblin and drop down the Hood simultaneously. So maybe they also get that rock, and then that's almost a dead location, breaking even. We do see a drop, though, into Eternity range. It's a White Widow, so the -4 from the Widow's Kiss is going to try to compete against it. There goes the Green Goblin. The final result in that lane is going to end up as a total draw, so nobody ends up with the rock. Defensive move from the White Widow keeps things a little bit more intact. As Docty is looking to take an advantage on the Eternity range by clogging that location now via debris. It'll help keep the Nebula in check too, but it's more about what is Roshko trying to compete with at the moment. You don't necessarily want to clog up the Eternity range quite yet, however, yeah, the Widow's Kiss now via Annihilus could be destroyed. And the clogging of Eternity range has got to feel pretty stellar. Even though we could see a back and forth, it's about who's going to end up with the priority going into the final turn, because there is that chance that Roshko is now drawn via the transform from Loki and Annihilus in hand. Annihilus would be a 4 cost then. So they still could load. Yeah, they could load the Mojo World as the Professor X holds in the Hobgoblin. Ooh, what a key move right there to hold the lane in check. As now Docty has to see if 3 cards would be enough in the right, but the value won't be enough to go over the top there. Great pull from that Loki to get the Prof X. Gotta feel good. Escape. Moving on. Playing your own counters, as they say in the chat. Yes, 100%. Roshko got a huge pull from that. As we now enter high stakes for the first time, Roshko sitting on 8 cubes, Docty sitting on 7, as we see Sokovia toss the Green Goblin out of Docty's hand, but Agent Coulson out of Roshko's hand. Here's a Hood and a Snow Guard. And a snap immediately once we see the Raptors. An immediate snap coming from Docty. Liking the odds there with all of the clog infestation that can happen. All right, small Quidjet. Just try to keep an advantage going into turn 3. Wouldn't be surprised if we had a Kamar Taj drop. Oh, dropping all those rocks all over the place with the advantage potentially in Savage Land. This is a 4 cube amount of rocks as we watch it rain and hail. Here comes 2 draws from Cable for Roshko, but Debris is gonna load up the battlefield on both sides with tons and tons of rocks. Hobgoblin essentially being the highest risk play going into turn 5, but here on 4, Docty's got to decide if the Sentry is worth dropping down in security for Sokovia. A top deck Annihilus would feel incredibly solid to be able to send on over both the Hood or destroy the Hood and the Void. We get a Jeff, we get a Hawk, and throw on top of it a Void. Now, we also could see potentially a cheeky play of capitalizing on the Hobgoblin on turn 5 while Kamar Taj is disabled. And there's a snap back for 7 cubes. Docty fist bumping, Roshko fist bumping. Looks like they're going all the way in on it, y'all. Without the draw of Cannonball, Docty is really banking heavy on this final play. As Roshko is gonna push Docty all in. There's the float and a dropping of the demon. Both players have movable Jeffs. Top deck is only a Nebula. 1 card to drop. And Docty, having a lead already in the Savage Land, now has to try to decipher where is the victory coming from on the map. We get the move of the Jeff over into the right-hand lane as Gladiator drops to compete over in Sokovia, and a Cosmo plays down into Kamar Taj, and just like that, even with a locked down middle Savage Land, unfortunately, Roshko came on down with 2 big 3-cost cards and ends up taking down DoctySnap. Great way to start us off here in round number 1. Well, I should say match number 1 here for week 4 of the Snap Judgements League. Stick around, y'all. We'll be right back. All right, at least they have. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for enjoying that short little break brought to you by our sponsors, AdSense and Twitch. So now we're going to continue on to match number 2. Match number 2 here. It's going to be Lufku versus the BlacqDahlia. Good luck. Have fun. Let's see what they're bringing outside of Lufku. Basically just straight up saying she not in the deck. Let's get the match running. As it definitely lagged loading up for Lufku. There we go. All right. Love seeing someone bringing in High Evolutionary right now into competitive Marvel Snap, because it is hands down one of the most left behind decks in Marvel Snap at the moment. I truly think that. I think that High Evolutionary, as we've started to see the rise of some of these larger stat stick decks come to be, we've seen the consistency of High Evolutionary slowly start to fall off as Quantum Tunnel is going to be replacing into a armor, and Pixie does its flip in Hala for BlacqDahlia. I like a couple of different ideas personally, but I'd like to hear from you, whether you're here live in the chat or you're down in the comments below. What can we do to make High Evolutionary a better deck now in Marvel Snap? It was a very stellar deck, it was a very consistent deck, and it's basically started to get more and more outpowered. Is there something that needs to be added to the game, or have an effect tweaked via High Evolutionary to bring this back into top tier competition? Or are we about to see a Pixie Mobius deck completely slaughter or lose? There's so many different ways that this could go. Let's find out. Nocturne removing Hala is irrelevant compared to the Professor X, who's at -1 play, ends up getting smacked down. And Magic, even though there's more energy now going to be on the board and there's nothing really that can be done in that left lane, now Lufku has 2 turns to mess with the middle Quantum Tunnel as well as Asteroid M and try to keep up. We're looking at a skip, but it's really about what's going to go into the deck right now. And this is a tough situation because you need to capitalize on maybe getting that Abomination out. So reducing your chances into the 50-50 are pretty important. I like the idea of playing the Hulk here on 6. Let everything happen. Nebula gets tossed in, comes back with an Echo, and Minoru is going to drop in and be replaced with Ms. Marvel, who's giving bonuses to both sides. She's not going to slide over because it wasn't the played card. And Asteroid M is now pretty heavily favoring Lufku. The Abomination is still in the deck, but the other option is Scorpion. It's a 50-50 toss-up right here, tossing the Misty Knight into the Quantum Tunnel to try to pull out the Abomination. we get a snap, and I like the bluff snap on this because it's only a 50-50 chance to have that middle location shoot up 13 power because of the undoing of the Widow's Kiss, knowing that there's some inconsistency potentially in the Quantum Tunnel. We've got a 4-cube play here as Cannonball's just gonna rotate out and in now with Nico Minoru, and the Sasquatch is gonna rotate out and in and bring down the Nebula. So it's a double weak play as the Misty Knight now hits big, gets the Abomination, brings the Quantum Tunnel in favor of Lufku, and that's gonna be 4 cubes to take a small little lead here. 10-6 moving into round number 2. Lufku over the BlacqDahlia. Ooh, and a very scary Elysium to start us off here. I'm not sure if I'm the hugest fan of also using the Scorpion now here on turn 1, just because your opponent has just as much opportunity to play out multiple cards on the earlier turns. It might be stronger to hold on to a later turn to have more hits for that Abomination. Instead of keeping Asgard as a potential play, gonna just say, enough, moving on, let me discard it, convert it into Limbo, get a head start on that right away. Now, Jeff dropping down is gonna also lower down the Abomination, and a Cloning Vats is a huge location for rotating out multiple A-bombs quickly. That's a bonus 9 power card into the hand. Even if Nocturne turns off Limbo, you've got at least one other A-bomb, plus a free Misty Knight to boot. Nice acceleration for Lufku. Small favoring at the moment against a very top contending meta deck right now. Looking to possibly get a little bit of a greed play, as you're never certain with Limbo at the moment. And is also able to stay under curve, so the Sunspot's gonna shoot up and the Misty Knight's gonna activate after the second Nocturne drops in, plus the Mobius, who's undoing the benefit of Elysium now, presents a little bit of a saving grace for BlacqDahlia. Trying to ramp up that Sunspot with just an armor being dropped into Cloning Vats needs to be watched here, especially when you do see a Cannonball that can move a card out of a lane while they still have 2 locations open to work with. It's going to be a double flip of the Limbo as both Nocturnes go from Cloning Vats over to Limbo. Cloning Vats first putting an armor back into Lufku's hand. The first flip of Nocturne is going to be a big house as it locks down with Professor X, and then the second Nocturne is going to flip it into an Onslaught Citadel, and Nico Pixie puts Demons down into the Cloning Vats as well. With everything down to Elysium, priority was going to be the biggest player here, and with the hit of that Misty Knight, the priority switches to Lufku, which means we do end up seeing a potential Cannonball play from the opposite end. This is a pretty precarious situation to be in if you're Lufku. You can get 4, maybe 3 in total. Yeah, you can get 4 in total by putting any card down, but it is going to be Cannonballed most likely, and that's just not enough to compete right now. Lufku, take the cube, move forward. One of the very few times Misty Knight actually ends up becoming the backfire moment. Starting off low with the Nebula and Scorpion, while Cloning Vats brings some interesting play into the final turns. Hub is going to pop in a Legion, which could be a very cheeky surprise play as the brand new Sunspot drops into the hub and Nocturne comes on top of the cloning vats. Trying to capitalize as fast as possible seems to be the strategy with Abomination. Specifically because Mobius M. Mobius is a competitive real thing in this matchup, so as soon as you can plop out that 9 power card, seems to be the strategy that they're going to have to take, as the White Widow's going to drop a kiss next to the A-bomb and disappear thanks to the destruction of Nico Minoru, put 2 more cards into BlacqDahlia's hand, and Nebula then also on top of the cloning vats puts another Nebula into the hand, loading it up. Now staying under curve again, looking to drop down a second Abomination as we see the Cha-Cha slide shuffle happening several times here. BlacqDahlia slides over the Nocturne, puts down another card, and we see Sasquatch into the cloning vats, plus Nocturne flipping the the Hellfire into a Bifrost, but it's after turn 4, so Bifrost isn't going to do a thing. And we get a snap, as BlacqDahlia doesn't want to deal with it. Okay, fair. Absolutely fair. Wakandan Embassy helping both players out. No huge downside for either player from that location this game, as Nebula goes over into the right first. All of the squirrels create a double win scenario for each player. BlacqDahlia liking the clogging, which is going to benefit the cannonball lines, but at the same time, Lufku has a much taller deck as Sanctum Sanctorum locks the right location. Not going to be too much of a concern, most likely, but it does mess up a little bit of the cannonball plan. We see a snap. And this is a tough scenario. Looks to put down the reduction, let the Nebula rise up in the Sanctum Sanctorum. Nocturne now has the flexibility to move if needed. As Abomination really pulling the weight here for Lufku in this battle. Now gets to drop down on curve on turn 5. As Sasquatch gets dropped by Dahlia. Now, Lufku's got to decide where the win location is at the moment. It could be leaving Nocturne exactly where it is, because you know your opponent has a Hulk and an Infinite. So if Hulk has to come on down as your largest potential option, if it was from draw, you're trying to factor at maximum 18 power. And instead of just going tall in only one lane, Lufku's going to spread the power out via magic and armor. Drops the armor into the left lane, the magic into the mid, and Cannonball is going to smack the Abomination into the Sanctum Sanctorum and snipe that location. A risky, risky Cannonball play by BlacqDahlia backfires. Wow. We saw the progression of Sanctum Sanctorum and the rise and fall of what those locations could do. Once again, folks, location patching doesn't exist as we get another Central Park. But we saw how Cannonball is heavily affected by that. Sokovia tosses a Jeff and a Scorpion. as echoes. Just a simple free 1-drop. Potential flipper in the Pixie Mobius equation. As now, Quantum Realm drops in, but with the scaling consistency of Nebula, you're gonna have to have that be your magic location. Flip it over, keep the Nebula in check, because at least 1, 2, you have 2 cards that could be dropped in there. That means the Nebula is gonna guaranteed go up to at least 1, 2, that's 7. So you're already in the deficit. Late flip and float as we get a Sasquatch over into Central Park for Lufku, taking advantage of the Ms. Marvel bonus now for the first time. There's the She-Hulk competing in the Nebula lane, and now Hulk is going to try to go over the top in the Sasquatch lane here on turn 6, confident in his ability to steal the 2 locations it looks like on the side, as Nocturne's going to flip on over into Limbo, deactivating Limbo here on turn 6, converting it into Camartage, as the Cannonball is now going to hit 2 cards, going to move over the She-Hulk, followed by the Magic, both land into Sokovia, and with that 16 power Hulk over in the Central Park, that means Lufku's taking down the BlacqDahlia in a 9-1 style matchup. High Evolutionary hit big in the Cannonball Profex matchup. A lot of great locations coming on down and helping both players in different scenarios. The right lockdown, the wrong lockdown, the destruction just couldn't happen the way that you needed it to. And the armor probably being the MVP of that deck to keep the Cannonball plays in play and not have them be converted into rocks. Great navigation right there. That was very exciting to see, because I truly believe High Evolutionary is a deck that needs a little more love in Marvel Snap. I personally am on the boat of it needing a buff in some way. What do you think? Let us know down in the comments below. Welcome back, folks. We are going to continue on going into match number 3 right away. Right away, we're going into Fili versus Mano Lucca, also known as Dallas. So we're going to call out Dallas. Mano Lucca, it's just going to keep switching in the names, and let's see what they're bringing to the table today. Fili starting us off here with a Jubilee Blink deck with a little Hope Summers action as well. War Machine makes its first competition appearance here in the Snap Judgements League. War Machine, a very underrated card in my own personal opinion. I absolutely love playing War Machine decks. They're exciting and especially are able to contest against that wonderful, wonderful friend of ours, Professor X. Moving into a Mobius, as Fili shifts the board all by themselves. Looking at the sizing, looking at the phrase, it's not me, I'm not doing it. Fili, I appreciate your perfection. The OCD-ness is greatly appreciated here. As Dallas drops down a Nova, first reveal of the style of deck, with a Monster Metropolis going into the 3rd location. We now see Mobius, both players rocking a Mobius M Mobius. And with 2 cards now about to be drawn via Camartage, Fili's gotta have a pretty confident 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4 cards coming down over the next 2 turns. Here comes a Giganto plus an Infinite. The 2 big boys make a big appearance as Nova immediately explodes, hits the Killmonger and the Mobius M Mobius on turn 4. And now, needing to try to scale and keep up here on turn 5, instead of opting for the Blink synergy due to all of the power in Camartage, they opted for the Angela Mobius to try to scale in the right, show some competition there, and Dallas says that 35 is just going to be too much. I'm not going to be able to stack up on top of it. Pretty smart retreat in my opinion. Just give him 1 cube, move on to round number 2. And Utopia feels very good if you're Fili in this deck. Getting a Hope Summers down on 2, potentially even the Red Guardian, depending on your first initial drop. If we see something like a Sunspot, even a Nebula, great way to counteract it immediately. As Nidavellir drops into the middle location. The Mobius getting top decked there is very tempting, and Fili's going to use it as a snap potential moment to try and sneak a cube out of Dallas. If Dallas is also sitting on Mobius, though, canceling out both players, essentially it's a dead even play, and Dakin also now ends up entering the battlefield. I think this is the first Dakin we have seen played within all of Snap Judgment's history. Vormir benefiting the Dakin, so they have a location to throw down that Muramasa shard. Get the immediate ramp up. That's also got to feel good, and they don't play it out yet. Instead, they play their own Mobius, take advantage of the turn 3 that way, so that way there's no further rampage that can happen to benefit Fili. And now it's a Mobius on Mobius scenario with 5 energy thanks to the Hope Summers bump. As Kitty Pryde Red Guardian drops down as the combo, but Dallas is also sitting on priority. That Red Guardian still can potentially miss. We could even see something cheeky like the Muramasa shard dropping into Nidavellir, assuming the Red Guardian will also drop on top of it and keep Mobius in play, but deactivate the Muramasa shard, which would still be a Nidavellir for 4 power. Here comes the Nico, just in time, but no! The Killmonger now destroys Nico, and Killmonger himself destroys. Pulls 2 cards, and Mobius is going to get annihilated here via the Red Guardian in the middle lane. Boom! Oh, if you're Fili, that's got to feel good. If you're Dallas, you're barking the dogs home. But now, going on top afterwards, making sure the ordering was in play. That Red Guardian has upgrade potential via blink. We could even see it just blink out a 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it could end up blinking, I'm assuming, into a Magneto. If this is the style build, you've got She-Hulk, Giganto, Infinite. Obviously, it could hit Jubilee, and then essentially all is fair game. Couple of options to work with here. And neither player still playing into Vormir, as there's the Jubilee upgrade, and it pulls down Angela onto Nidavellir. So that Kitty Pryde is going to give extra power to Angela as well. As LDS removes Mobius from the equation. And with the final turn and 1 extra energy, Fili is able to drop down both Giganto and Kitty Pryde. This is a tough one here for Dallas. Knowing that we can get the Dakin up 4 power via playing the Vormir. And maybe a snipe of Vormir. Is bringing it to 14 plus another 7 going to be enough to hold the tiebreaker in place? You are giving on another 2 plus 9 into Nidavellir, so that's going to go to 33 when all is said and done. So the middle lane is pretty foregone. So it's a matter of, is there enough to steal Utopia and then on top of it, Vormir? They play 2 cards into Vormir as the Giganto's probably securing that Utopia location. There's the Muramasa Shard taking the destruction, and afterwards it's a death into Vormir, and that's not gonna be enough. It's gonna knock off 4 cubes off of Dallas, and Fili sitting pretty now with a 10-5 lead. A lot of power left on the board. Both players have a variety of different ways to play it out. And a ramp deck's worst enemy, TVA, drops into the first location. Here comes Aniku with the location change. Is Nico actually going to open it up for both players in this process? They are, as we're gonna get another move over. Grandmaster takes the Nico, flips it over, Icebox 1, Space Throne 2. Double activation, and it locks the Grandmaster. Fili immediately snaps, going into a Project Pegasus with all of the power and all of the things. Man. This one does not feel good right now if you're Dallas. Yeah, War Machine play, huge for Fili. Having that flexibility to then move into the Space Throne if need be later on. Just a kitty pride. Take advantage of the dream dimension right now. Minoru drops into Dream Dimension as we get lots of add-ons. Grandmaster ×2 flopping into Dallas's hand. War Machine on Washington, D.C. here leads to an immediate retreat. We see an Infinite potentially coming on down. But I think Fili may have made a small mistake there, just forgetting about how Dream Dimension was going to end up still affecting that deck. If not, either way, they still had a couple of potential options outside of that. Here we go. Here's a Sunspot going up against Nova. And the Peak does an awful flip on that Giganto, as there's an immediate snap. Trying to push Dallas in now. Fili trying to get Dallas to do all the math if you have the things. And Dallas says, this is worth it. I'm going all in. I'll risk my final 3 cubes. Fili says, good luck. Have fun. Let's see what Monster Island can present in the equation. Resetting that Hope Summers back to 3. And both players capitalizing on it. Fili opts for the Hope Summers here on 4 over Angela. There's the Dakin and the Nico. Nico with the Destroy, so going to be able to drop down that Muramasa Shard early if they want. Followed up by Angela Kitty Pride into the center lane. Let the Sunspot float up another 2 and keep a priority play in the process potentially. Here's 2 more energy from Hope Summers as LDS eliminates the lane. Wiped it clean in a huge hit for Lady Deathstrike as we see 2 cards now get drawn into Dallas's hand. Now with just a She-Hulk to play, Fili is gonna play down She-Hulk. Already pushed in for 3, there's no use in retreating. Might as well play it out to see what they do. Damn, that hurt. Can Fili surprise us all with a full clean sweep here in round 5? Dallas looking at every potential option and decides to play 1 in every lane. Here's the Death in the mid. Lastly, the Killmonger. That's going to flip the Nova and that Muramasa Shard over into the graveyard and allow all of the scaling in all 3 lanes to be a casserole for Dallas, taking the first cubes off of Fili in their matchup. It is now 7-3, advantage Fili. Round 6. Giganto in hand, so 2 of the Blink targets now in hand, so not the best start for Blink. Fili is needing more of those smalls to get drawn earlier and keep those big guys down in the deck. Kitty Pride bounces back again. Just rotating the Kitty Prides in and out. Maybe looking to see a little bit of a pop here for turn 3. All right, there's your full turn 3 right there. Angela Kitty Pride. There's no Hope Summers on the draw, so we're not looking at a turn 5 Infinite, but we still could be looking at a turn 6 Infinite. Fili looking for something else other than the War Machine to be able to work with here, as Dakin's gonna hold on to that Muramasa Shard for as long as possible, knowing that Stark Tower is gonna give the buff up first to Dakin. Mobius definitely feels like a good plan. this might be the priority switch too, as the Silver Samurai makes its first appearance over for Dallas with that Dockin deck and gets War Machine out of Fili's hand. So what seemed like a simple, smooth play line now starting to have a little bit of a backfire as Fili's looking at Hope Summers, Kitty, and Giganto to try and fill up the lanes here towards the end of the match. But is the Giganto in the left gonna be enough to hold down the Shadowland? Stature lands into Xandar, and we see 4 cards for Fili get the Stark Tower bonus. Priority is in the favor right now of Fili. Sorry, of Dallas, my apologies, of Dallas. So playing out the Kitty Pryde feels safe, knowing that your 1-costers will still survive. Once we see some destruction come down from either Lady Deathstrike or Killmonger, both work. Dallas really stuck here because this is for all 3 cubes. He decides to go for it and puts down the Odin just for a straight 8. And the Odin, even though discarding the Muramasa Shard and putting a ridiculous amount of power into the Stark Tower, the Xandar bonus is what's going to keep Fili over the top there and knock out Dallas 7-0. Fili moves on in the Snap Judgements League. Tight battle here and a good amount of surprises coming on down from that Dockin deck. We saw 3 different mechanics for the removal of that Muramasa Shard. We saw the Killmonger, we saw the Lady Deathstrike, and we also saw the Silver Samurai. Knowing that all of those cards need to have, almost all those cards need to have a total of 4 energy or more to make the Dockin effect actually worthwhile. Knowing that there is such a thing as Thor in this game, could we potentially see Dockin someday coming to 3-5 because of the extra energy required to get his effect to happen? Let me know what you think as we enjoy what AdSense has to bring us today. Welcome back, folks. We are continuing here in week number 4 of season number 2 of the Snap Judgements League. Once again, for those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and we are continuing on as we go into alphainsidious versus IronBench, and let's see what each of them bring to the party today. alphainsidious starting off with Quake, Shang-Chi, Gladiator, and Enchantress in hand. So looks to be a little bit of a tech line, Saratech style build. Now with White Widow. Nice plop in there for the Aunt May as well. Get that up to a 2-5, slide it over, leave behind a kiss. Great starting play. Let's see what IronBench is leaning towards. We don't know because Jeff is in 50% of decks right now because he is the most played card officially in Marvel Snap. And Weird World exposes both players in round number 1 of this matchup. They start getting a heads up and a head start on exactly what each other is playing. We know that there's a Psylocke coming down. There's an Alioth who does not get destroyed via Gladiator. And now Psylocke, Red Hulk, Alioth, We're getting a big junction here to tell what IronBench is playing as Mr. Incognito comes on down during the live stream and resubscribes with their Amazon Prime. Thank you so much for subscribing with us, moving us up, and keeping the full-time dream alive. If you'd like to support the channel here over on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button down below. You can always become a YouTube member or come join us here on the live stream, twitch.tv/ItsGuestGaming. We have things like, I don't know, sax parties and chaos, to say the absolute minimum. Just like how there are bits coming on down right now too, which could make for a very interesting break that only the Twitch viewers would be able to enjoy, but may cause a gap in the gameplay. Let's see if that gap happens. With that Psylocke ramp now dropping, we see the Red Hulk getting plopped down into Aunt May's. Trying to figure out the easiest way to capitalize on the power. Undoes what the Ms. Marvel bonus presents to be able to undo the Widow's Kiss, lock down the Professor X, and now the future of IronBench's lane is reliant on playing 6 energy perfectly. And we get a snap for 4 cubes from alphainsidious, who's going to play down the Enchantress, followed by the Quake just for a little bit of power. I'm not sure if they're recognizing how that power is going to drop when all is said and done. That's going to be a big snap if it moves forward for 4 cubes to undo the Ms. Marvel bonus in Aunt May's. And he locks it in for 4 as Omega Red drops into his Central Park also. All of the ongoings feel good until that big mean Enchantress drops down, undoes the bonus in Aunt May's, undoes the bonus for Omega Red, puts down the Quake just to say that they did, and that flips over Central Park. It is now 10-6 advantage alphainsidious as we move into round number 2. Hard way to learn the Enchantress is in that deck, especially in round 1. Now, with Project Pegasus on the board, we get 2 3-cost cards dropping down immediately. alphainsidious plays down the Gladiator first, who tries to eliminate the Red Hulk and then realizes it's Red Hulk, it ain't going anywhere. Iron Lad, on the other hand, is going to take on the Nocturne effect as Nowhere now enters the middle lane, which might be beneficial to keep on the board, considering that you've already got an Iron Lad and a Red Hulk down, knowing that Ms. Marvel could not be undone out of the middle lane. White Widow's going to put the Widow's Kiss over into the left to help start that clog up as the Kiln now drops. And this is a very heavy favoring, it looks like, for IronBench. Here comes a Nocturne into the Kiln now, so we could see multiple lane changes between Iron Lad and Nocturne, as Shang-Chi is going to take out the Red Hulk immediately. We get a snap. The snap comes from alphainsidious, looking to take down IronBench here, with the very rare turn 4 successful Shang-Chi. Yes, sir. Goodbye, Red Hulk. Now, that Iron Lad can move in still to the Kiln. However, it also will reactivate the Kiln simultaneously. And Quake has to decide, is it going to be worthwhile to flip around those locations to their benefit? Only one location to activate the Quake at the moment. And they just go for the simple stat stick in the center lane. Here comes the Echo, trying to get a little bit of extra pointage. And it looks very likely we're about to see a Ms. Marvel play. If you look on your left-hand lane, you do have a 0 cost, a 4 cost, and a 3 cost. That means Ms. Marvel plus a 2 cost could safely drop at this time. And that has to be the potential play. The Jeff sliding over would bring it to 14. That would keep the kiln in favor of alphainsidious. And now with a Killmonger and Shadow King, the Shadow King's gonna undo the damage that's sitting currently on White Widow. As Iron Lad does make the swing over to preserve on that lane as Eliath undoes the abilities there in the left. Killmonger does nothing, Shadow King does nothing, but it's still a 10 to 7 and a 3 to 2. alphainsidious takes out 4 more cubes out of the pocket of the IronBench. 2 big 4 cube games to start off the round for alphainsidious, and now IronBench up against the ropes going into round number 3 with the first exposure of Rulk as Starlit Citadel plops into location 1 and Danger Room plops into location 2. Small drop of the Echo, let the Rulk ramp even higher over for IronBench. As Sarah gets drawn out of the deck, I believe for the very first time here for alphainsidious. Gladiator's gonna make a deck pull and it's gonna go to Psylocke, so it's gonna add the extra energy for free and then clear the board space. As we get a snap from IronBench, who says, I'm just gonna go all in on it. Let's do this. Now's the time. Nocturne does the slide and it converts into the raft as Iron Lad now turns into Omega Red. The raft now being empty after the Starlit Citadel shuffle, with a 21 power Rulk sitting in IronBench's hand. alphainsidious is going to have several cards to mess with on turn number 6. As Rogue takes away the Ghost over in Starlit Citadel and Jeff drops into the raft. So priority being gone, creates an interesting line here for IronBench. alphainsidious looking at every possible scenario here with the priority, maybe looking at trying to take advantage of this Danger Room percentage to mess around with a little bit of play. You can remove the Omega Red bonus via the Enchantress, remove the Echo, and then simultaneously try to protect in the Danger Room by moving the Danger Room around. I like the quaking of bringing Danger Room over into the right just because they're trying to compete in that lane in particular. And there's no played card in there, so the Jeff sliding over is going to be safe, even though the Omega Red bonus is going to be removed out of the Iron Lad as 1, 2, and 3 all slap on down. Echo disappears thanks to Killmonger in the raft, and Quake shuffles everybody all the way around. That Danger Room means the guarantee landing here in Starlit Citadel for IronBench, who puts down the Rulk and keeps the point advantage. 2 cubes finally getting knocked off alphainsidious for the very first time, and we go 8-2 here in round number 4. and an immediate snap, trying to put pressure here in the low stakes, forcing IronBench, because it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, forcing IronBench to say this is gonna count the same as next round, or maybe not. Being up against the ropes is looking like it's gonna be beneficial though, as alphainsidious gets a 310 out of Ghost thanks to Shuri's lab. Removal of 2 power via the White Widow. We could also see a very cheeky play upcoming in the future, with that Shadow King maybe undoing a little bit of the bonus if the bonus gets too tall over in Shuri's lab for IronBench. Here we go. The Rogue is going to steal away the Ghost. Oh, IronBench now keeping the priority in the right place. Ms. Marvel drops on down, puts a bonus into Shuri's lab, and then gets it removed via the snipe of Echo from IronBench. Echo finally having a huge impact there, getting the timing right in the playdown on turn 4. Enchantress looking to remove the benefit from the Ghost now. As Iron Lad lands in Orcus Forge, and it pulls out extra power from the Psylocke. Psylocke's going to be the draw as they sit on a large Rulk. So with alphainsidious now having the priority, the Shadow King play does seem to go away. We could see up to 3 cards possibly get dropped from alphainsidious as well. Looking to cover all bases here by having that Rulk get covered over, as Gladiator's gonna pull out a Profex, so no one's gonna get destroyed. As Shang-Chi eliminates the whole right-hand lane, and in the middle, it's coming down to a Sentinel. So we end up in a tiebreaker scenario, 16 versus 3. Rulk or no Rulk, alphainsidious loses 2 cubes. And Lamentus 1, who we have not seen very often in this competition, drops down with no ongoings being permitted in the left lane via Isle of Silence. Both players aren't happy about it, as they both drop a Jeff. Krakoa completely useless at this point. As Red Guardian removes that movability from the baby Landshark. Gladiator has no concerns about a weird draw. As we could see a rogue baiting here of playing the Ms. Marvel first down on turn 4 in order to see the Omega Red. They liked seeing the priority play to their advantage. As we look at a 3-4-3 scenario where Shadow King and Gladiator would receive the buff on the left, Jeff, Ghost, Enchantress would receive the buff on the right. Assuming there's no rogue, but what's that in the middle? the Rogue. Rogue stealing the Ms. Marvel buff, which is a pretty hefty piece right now, might lead to another retreat. Unless if the math works for Enchantress to drop down and take it. The Enchantress would make it a 9-2 in the mid as Rulk drops to the left. They remove the Rogue, but it's not enough in the right. That's another 2 cubes. Look, the IronBench chipping away 2 at a time, 2 at a time, 2 at a time. And now it's a 2 out of 3 battle scenario here in round 6 for alphainsidious. Alpha has to win one of the next 2 matches to take down the IronBench. And with a White Widow now in hand, alphainsidious is looking at the potential of having a later Quake also drop in, as they debated between the right and the mid. As we had a Psylocke who was pulled on turn 2, gets contested in the right lane. Energy priority back into the hands of alphainsidious via Castle Blackstone. And a White Palace is going to send a Sarah over to IronBench at 5-6 and send a 6-15 from IronBench over to alphainsidious. Red Hulk plus Shadow King, or Red Hulk plus Quake even, if we see some location fun, could end up being a very critical play going into the final turn. And is going to steal the priority away in that middle lane by keeping the Shadow King and the Castle Blackstone separate to the left. Now with 5 energy to play with, on turn 4, we see alphainsidious looking at that Sarah and licking their chops. Here comes the Iron Lad, also known as somewhat of a Nocturne, sliding into Castle Blackstone and converting it into Fisk Tower as the real Nocturne lands into Wakandan Embassy. Now, Sarah's on the board, so we have some priority issues to have to deal with. The less hazardous Ghost also is playing defense against a potential Rogue, helping to give a second target in the left. As Ghost drops, followed by Killmonger, removing the Echo from the middle lane. That's dropping it down to 1 power, as Jeff also brings it to 5, favoring alphainsidious in all 3 lanes. And the removal of that Echo looks like it might pay off right now. Needing to choose is the option to spread via Ms. Marvel and go wide for 14 power? Or is it more viable to go tall via Red Hulk? In your left, you have a 2, 3, and a 5. In your right, you have a 2, 3, and a 4. Ms. Marvel's going to get her full effect out there on the board, even with Absorbing Man just being a 6 power stat card. alphainsidious looking very promising here going up against the IronBench, even with the magic of Rogue potentially landing into the middle lane to steal that Ms. Marvel. You still need to also get enough power over into the White Palace. We see Nocturne make the slide over into the right, converting the White Palace into the big house. Here's the Omega Red to give the extra 3 into the opposite 2 lanes. That's going to put 12 over in the big house. The reduction hits via the Red Guardian in the left. There's no Rogue dropping down on the battlefield as Absorbing Man's going to go, followed by the Ms. Marvel. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be the casserole that takes down the IronBench. alphainsidious with a nail biter hanging on for dear cubes and takes down the IronBench. great battle back and forth with that Sarah Tech deck, showing a lot of restraint and control and the power of what that archetype still could potentially do within competitive Marvel Snap. If you like that, you're gonna like what's gonna come up next, so stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. This is match number 5 here for week number 4. Let's go dive into a new competitor. That's the word I'm looking for. New competitor we have not had the chance to showcase yet here in the Snap Judgments League. Let's dive into the Void versus Ponder. Stevens, welcome to the Shoutcast. Great to have you here. Thank you for submitting. If you're interested in having your games casted here live on stream or be a part of the YouTube content, just contact Pulse Glazer from Snap Judgments League. He will provide you with access to where we upload all these videos so we can talk about them and showcase them right here, as we're going to have a very destructive initial battle going into the Void and Ponders. We can take a look at the Null. We see the Galactus. This looks like a very familiar deck already at this point. Venom, Wave, Galactus, Ultron. This is all Dem 6s. All of Dem 6s, as Void doesn't want to deal with the cloning bats in any way, shape, or form and decides to back away after Ponder has already gone in for a snap in turn number 1. We're going into round number 2 here with Blink, Venom, Wave as the opening combo, and we go into Death's Domain in the left location first with another immediate snap, but this time it was the Void. All right, Xandar goes into the middle lane, already with 3 to work with. We could see Wave directly drop down also into Destroyer. Instead, we go with the Venom line, take the extra energy out of the X-23. As Jeff flops into Xandar. 4 energy to work with here on turn 3 as the Dark Dimension, my apologies, over in the right-hand lane drops in. Here comes the Wave into Xandar as Red Guardian's gonna remove the bonuses that come from X-23. Red Hulk makes its first appearance, popping out of the hand. And now the Death's Domain is advantage Void. What could have been an amazing cheeky play of sliding that X-23 over into the left Death Domain via Galactus has now been thwarted, and now Blink is gonna have to do some work here and convert the Wave into a tall friend, because Jeff has the ability to slide into either of the domains and steal that location, so it is a competition officially for the middle lane. Jeff moving over into the right would bring us into a tiebreaker scenario, as we see Ponder play 2 cards into the Death's Domain as Blink flips that Wave and converts it into a null. White Widow shoots down, drops a -4 kiss into the domain and disappears herself. And then Quake shuffles up and deals to open up Xandar now in the right lane. Priority favoring the Void. No need to try a cheeky Galactus play here when you've got a 4/12 death that you could drop into Xandar, and Nocturne can also now move for Ponder. 17 is the number to beat in Xandar. And as tempting as that Ultron is, it's not going to be enough to steal the Dominion. Nocturne could slide over there, and even though you'll get 2 from the drone and then take away 4 out of that Widow's Kiss, the Nocturne should still go over the top. It's going to be 8 in the Dominion. As Nocturne moves mid, and Ultron goes ahead and drops down all of the drones. It does give the advantage now with 7 into Death's Domain as Nocturne flips that location and then the Rulk drops in. So for 4 cubes, Ponder finds out the hard way that an Ultron exists. Looking for the cheeky outplay in the middle lane by moving that Nocturne over. Couldn't find the equation to make it happen as we see a double venoming via Camp Lehigh. And Castle Blackstone now plops into the mid. Here comes a Jeff for Ponder as Rulk, now who was drawn on turn 2, gets his first ramp up. And Muir Island, also known as Muir Island, depending on who you wish to be, also drops on down as Spider-Man's going to try to swing and lands into the island. Now slowly scaling for the remainder of the match. As Electro gets top decked here on 4. And this is a cheeky moment that if he can end up with a little bit of luck on his side, we could still end up seeing the Galactus play, because that would be 5 cards being eliminated. Your total power from the eliminations would be 18, which would be able to go over the top of a Rulk if Galactus can survive this. The slide of the Jeff is not going to be enough as Leech removes all the bonus and benefit from Destroyer, which helps the Void, and Galactus makes him kneel. With the aggression of using the Pixel Galactus, Ponder Stevons now has to figure out if what he has left is going to be enough. $22 is the null play, and there's not enough death to put out a Destroyer plus death combination. So 22 is the safe combo here, unless if Ponder has a Shang-Chi. I don't think it's gonna happen. It's a Rulk only, and even with Rulk getting that final ramp, it's not enough. 27 to 24 favoring the Void. Ponder down to 4 cubes, Void still sitting comfortably here on 9. And there goes any hope of the Galactus now happening as the squirrels from Central Park take over the battlefield. And a black vortex on top of it to boot. The Electro likes seeing that as it'll remove that awful ongoing. And a Space Throne now pops in. What a combination of locations here. With all of the limited space as the squirrel gets dropped down to -1, Red Guardian flips over for Ponder Stevons into Agatha for 14 power as the Electro puts an extra mana over on the Void side and then converts over into Galactus, who does not proc due to the Central Park. Just a 5 power card, not going to be enough there. And with a clogged up Space Throne, Void has to try to win both lanes because Jeff exists. Taking the Venom and using it to their advantage while trying to work against a Rulk. Ponder says, I have got this over you. And now the Void sees the line. He doesn't. He doesn't see the line. Oh, there was a Destroyer Galactus. There was a Destroyer Galactus combo that would have won. He missed it. Could have knocked out Ponder Stevons. I'm pretty sure that was turn 5 because we had the ramp up. And by moving too quickly, a missed opportunity by the Void getting scared. All right, Void's got some work ahead of him now. Still up 8-4. As first the X-23 drops in. Now the Quantum Tunnel's a very interesting play here. Specifically because that Venom can remove the Widow's Kiss and potentially convert into a Galactus, which would cause all of the chaos. Right here on turn 3 as Weird World draws for each player and Jeff makes his appearance too. Not looking to take that line, goes ahead and takes the Destruction via X-23 first, takes the Chomp down via Venom, puts another energy into the board, plops the X-23 on the far right, not the best scenario. And now they redraw that Quantum Tunneled White Widow. So it's going to be an even match of White Widows and Widow's Kisses here in the Quantum Tunnel, undoing some of the damage Ponder Stevens did before the flip. Here's their Electro from the Void getting tossed back into Ponder's deck. And plopping out a Claw, who makes its first appearance here in this game. As a Widow's Kiss drops in point 1, the Death brings some beefy power to the lane as the Wave then comes on top of that. And the 17 power Rulk looms on top, who can now be ramped out early, potentially in the left, as Ponder is sitting on a lead in the right and a very difficult way to come back. And they're gonna go for the Ultron Clog now. There's the Nocturne Shuffle. 2 cards drop for Ponder on the left. Here comes the Ultron over the top and loading up the drones in the final 2 locations. Rulk goes down for Ponder as Nocturne flips the Weird World into the sewer system, and Quake does a flip again and puts the Quantum Tunnel now into Nocturne's lane, securing the ability to go attack safely now in the sewer system. With 6 energy to work with, Void only puts down a 6/2 null into the left. Hoping and assuming for some action in the mid, we don't see it. It's Jeff into Blink, who flips into Red Guardian, who reduces down the Venom by 2. And it's not enough. That takes off 4 cubes from the Void, and we move into high stakes. Sorry, that was high stakes. My apologies. Nidavellir and Orcus Forge. As Rulk moves to 17, it's 4-4, and a Nexus plops in. Very exciting location to work with for both players right here, given the lack of location control outside of the Quake. So it's a race to see which mechanic is going to be more beneficial to our players. Red Guardian tried to catch that X-23 in time. Instead, it just catches the Venom. And now we see a Blink into the Nexus to try to keep some priority in line. We have a safe Ultron in hand, so it won't get converted that way. Here goes the Blink, takes the Venom and disappears it back into the deck. Pops out the Destroyer instead for 21 power, sitting in Nidavellir, as X-23 lands over in the left also. You've got a free open Galactus lane right now. And priority heading into turn 5. question is, does it hold? They're sitting on null. Here's the Galactus over into the Nexus. We might see 2 movements of X-23. Let's see what the final play is on it. 51 power is going to get added to that null in total, bringing it up to a 662. Now going up to saying when I'm 64, as that is a ridiculous amount of power that Ponder's going to have to try to deal with no matter what that leech undoes. You've got 8 energy, a free death, and a null on top of it. This is a Galactus player's dream turn 6. As Ponder tries to keep up for 4 cubes and plays 1 card and 1 card only. It's only their Ulk, and it's not gonna be enough. The Void takes down Ponder Stevons in a giant 6s matchup. Great to see some new competitors here on the Snap Judgments League and see these big, beefy decks still be able to keep up in the competitive Marvel Snap scene. It goes to show that any deck can be a great deck as long as you know how to pilot it. Let's take a look at one more game right after this brief word from our sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going into our 6th match here. As you see, we're showcasing TwoTiez versus the NaughtyU in our final showcase here for week number 4 of season 2 for the Snap Judgments League. Let's dive right on in and see what we've got with an America Chavez, Hope Summers, Blob, and Leech to kick us off with a Sakar on top of it. Great to see some America Chavez play once again, but no longer in the environment that it used to be in, as we see Leech on turn 1 remove the on reveals. NaughtyU, I hope there's even more ongoings than that hiding in that deck, as Maximus now sits as a 2/8. Feeling pretty confident and pretty beefy with TwoTiez here. Puts the extra cards in the hand with no concerns and has an advantage now in the Quantum Realm. Hope Summers and Nebula now taking advantage of the Quantum Realm as well, as it's a Maximus on Maximus matchup. And there's a lot of big cards to play with here. Warpath, not a very common card in Marvel Snap anymore. But with the Altar of Death on the board, actually very favored in this current moment, as TwoTiez is going to play Cosmo into the Altar of Death to get a ramp and get a little bit of a head start on the next turn. Here comes a Crossbones with Warpath. We're seeing a Scar matchup as they're looking to blob here, followed by potentially either Cannonball or maybe have a little bit of luck with 2 cards getting dropped in. Interesting. As they opt for the Ronin first. As we get a Prime sub over from G Mutation here on the live stream. Thank you so much for your support. Greatly appreciate it. Welcome in. We've got Ronin on Ronin. Lots of big, dumb idiots in this matchup, ladies and gentlemen. As we move to now having choices. We have Scar, we have Gladiator, we have Crossbones. Crossbones can't do anything. The Scar has to feel good. Could be a near mirror matchup. Armor in the Altar of Death. Y'all securing that location at the last second. Huge, huge move, even with the big old scar coming into the left. Ooh, that doesn't feel good. But now both players know it's essentially a mirror match, and there is the luxury of playing into armor lanes to work with. So I like this combination here. This is going to be interesting to see how these players also use those advantages to their disadvantage and vice versa when you've got cards like Scar in that, like armor in that exact scenario. Starts us off with America Chavez and Maximus, and a Nebula who loves the miniaturized lab. Cosmo. On Cosmo in the Hellfire Club too. Keeps the advantage, so at least crossbones can be dropped by the 2Ts. Maximus is now a safe play in the Hellfire Club now too. A completely negated armor via the negative zone leads to two options here. A safe play with the Ronin, potentially followed by Blob in maybe even the middle lane. So a simple 5-power Warpath drops into Hellfire Club, and Blob has to be the contention. Even with priority, neither player typically in the BDI decks end up with Shang-Chi, so it seems like a pretty safe play, and Naughty doesn't want to have to deal with it. Being so far down in the Hellfire Club, trying to compete up in 2 lanes outside of it, it's not sure. NaughtyU sees a Maximus disappear, so benefit to TwoTiez. And now the armor comes down afterwards. So the Gladiator play is interesting, looking at the timing of when the armors come on down. And a great advantage for TwoTiez right off the bat here. We've also seen it happen twice where the America Chavez has specifically hit the Maximus as a great late game 2-8 add-on play, even when hiding behind a Cosmo. No play here. They float energy. No? Okay, they caught it. They end up floating energy if they only play down the Maximus. Instead, opts to put down the armor. Additionally, safe play here. Here comes the crossbones. And then on top of it, as we get another sub from the Whitaker show simultaneously using the Amazon Prime. Thank you so much for rejoining us here on the live stream side of things, as Cosmo now ties up Utopia. So the advantage stays in TwoTiez, as we keep getting more and more options hitting the board for cards like Scar to become relevant. And we get a snap also from TwoTiez. Nebula goes up. Ronin drops for both players. Straight up mirror, still having the advantage over to TwoTiez. And is able to drop 3 cards on the final turn in the process. Very safe play here. Reducing down the Ronin on their opponent simultaneously while playing a Scar and helping to secure the middle lane. Even though Lemuria is going to go up to 11, try to keeping up with another 15 on top of that's incredibly difficult, and try to steal on top of the lane one more. Not looking good. So good retreat here. It is 8-7, TwoTiez over NaughtyU. Now, Mortar World enters in, normally a threat location, but to neither player needs to become a threat, given both players are rocking armor for their decks. Trying to keep an advantage to get out that crossbones here onto Eternity range. TwoTiez is able to do so and get the Hope Summers then to also allow for 6 on the next turn. And we see a snap come out of it as well. Ty is feeling very good about the line. Naughty not playing anything of real substance on the first 3 turns. Says, I got nothing, and moves away. An Asteroid M who's gonna mess with Hope Summers, Gladiator, Cosmo. Very large interfering location for both players' decks here, as Vormir ends up getting tossed out via the America Chavez. Could we go 3 for 3 with the America Chavez and see it reinforce the Maximus once again for TwoTiez? Armor, Chavez, buff up, Vormir, toss, draw. It's the armor this time. As he plays into the mid, forgetting that Asteroid M is essentially going to slide it over into Asteroid M. Wouldn't be surprised to see a frowny face emerge in a moment. From both players playing very similar decks, I wouldn't be surprised to see Cosmo get dropped early in this matchup, especially given how the Hope Summers line looks. as we get Nebula into Hell's Kitchen and Quake. So Hope Summers does its move, but now Nebula, all by itself, is currently holding down Vormir. Gladiator just milling the deck, and potentially not in a very positive way. As it drops the card into Vormir, it's going to be the Rulk, who stays there and then slides over into Asteroid M. I don't know why they didn't take the extra energy there with the guaranteed draw. Instead, now it's just Asteroid M versus Hell's Kitchen at this point. TwoTiez knows something by playing that Ronin down. Looking at Ronin Cannonball, maybe even. He keeps onto it as their own Ronin from Naughty side drops down. And now, not looking at a lot of good. There's the contemplation of being able to see, can I get the curve to stay strong here? But it doesn't look positive as Tiez has to back down. It is now 6-4. Advantage swinging over to the side of NaughtyU. We see Sokovia toss Cannonball and Maximus out of our players' hands. Cannonball, a pretty big hit here. Messing with a lot of the play order. As a 4-12 Crossbones gets drawn via the buff of America Chavez. Hoping that Tiez can keep that right lane. We end up with a Cosmo into the cloning bats. Yep. Try and keep the winning of the lane and the priority. Follow it up via Crossbones. Get a couple of those also to drop. That's gotta feel good. As they drop their own Cosmo, but they go mid. This ends up in a very interesting situation looking at turns 4, 5, and 6, because you see the Crossbones dropping down, which is going to reduce down that Scar from 6 to 11. That 11 now wants to compete in Lechugia. If Lechugia ends up in contest by putting down the Scar, they've got to hold down and force their opponent to keep the Warpath being a beneficial lane. So by playing the Scar in the mid, you're forcing them into a singular lane play. The Ronin is enough of a reinforcement, though, that it's no longer an issue, though. They can drop down that Warpath by playing wide, playing down, for example, Scar versus Maximus, and play them into 2 different lanes safely. Now on the final turn here, looking at all 4 cubes from TwoTiez. He's debating how can he use his resources to his best advantage. He can play out 2 cards to drop down that Ronin down to 13. That would make it to a 26 power lane. If they lose that Warpath additionally, it's still going to be holding on at 21. 17 in cloning vats is the only saving grace right now. And Tiez is trying to figure out if the blob is going to be enough to make it work. Naughty's got the priority. And Naughty backs out. Not feeling confident in taking the third location. We end up going to a 4-4 tie here in round 7. And bringing it down to the wire, y'all. This is how the final game of the day should end up being. It should be down to the wire as we end up with a free armor, also known as Wakanda, in location number 1. No destruction may happen. Nebula lands in location 3. And we get a cloning vats into the middle. And get another Maximus back to help keep Nebula in check. No, ends up for just ramping some extra power out there and puts another Maximus into the hand. It's already going to be a full hand for NaughtyU, so might as well go all in on it. Here we go. Nebula goes up as the Red Guardian's going to drop down the Maximus from a 6 to a 4. We start a potential Red Guardian cycle here as Maximus comes down again, puts the copy into the hand, and the Rulk goes up to 13 in NaughtyU's hand. Lots of Red Guardians potentially coming down. As Crossbones now enters the cloning vats, and Warpath does as well here on turn 4. Both players getting down 10 power cards. Small initiative advantage for NaughtyU. As they look to play 2 Ronins. TwoTiez looking at 2 different Ronins here in the cloning vats and trying to steal back Monster Metropolis, knowing that they're sitting on the America Chavez to make another reduction in comparison to their opponent. .22 power Ronin, thanks to the bonus of Monster Metropolis, feels very strong, especially when coupled with the 9, soon to be 11 power Nebula. And once again, it all comes down to one location. Is America Chavez plus Ronin gonna be enough to hold down Wakanda, or does NaughtyU have a trick up their sleeve with a couple of big cards into Wakanda? TwoTiez hanging on. 2 ties, 2Ts, 2 ties, 2 Ts, 2 ties, 2 Ts, 2 ties. Do you've got it? It's 2v2. Here comes a Scar plus Warpath for 16 power versus a Ronin and America Chavez for 17 power. And by the power of 1, 2Tiez takes down NaughtyU in the straight up big dumb idiots matchup. BDI versus BDI. What a way to end week 4 in a very, very tight race here between those 2 opponents. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you've seen this on YouTube, hit like and subscribe. If you're watching this on Twitch, stick around. We'll be right back. And if you're just, listening to this as an audio podcast because you're at work and you don't want to talk about it, look, I appreciate all the support and having that watch time increase here on YouTube in the background. Y'all, thank you so much for enjoying the Snap Judgments League here, hosted by yours truly, ItsGuestGaming. We'll see y'all next time.